I'm here with Joanne Martin Braun, and she has been teaching a more enlightened outlook on money for the past 10 years or so, and she's going to talk to us a little bit about that today. Joanne, why do we need to look into this issue of money?
Well, it's such a juicy topic, don't you think, Alex?
And yes, for everybody.
When I teach on this, it's not so much that I'm enlightened, but that as we look into what our relationship is with money, I mean, really look below the surface, below the sort of common understanding of, oh, money is this or that, and we just need to make more of it. There's sort of these common ways of relating to it. But when we really look into what is our relationship with money, what is it for me? How does it connect with how I want to be in my life, and how can I actually cultivate a more relaxed, maybe more powerful, maybe more fun, maybe more creative way of holding this very ordinary and yet very energized part of our life in a way that really works for me.
I see what you mean. Yeah, we don't usually talk about money in that way. So what can we do to cultivate a more energetic or cheerful outlook on money?
Well, there's been a lot written. Thank goodness. There's a lot of people right now who are really looking into this. There's been a lot written in the last 15 or 20 years around relating to money and ways that we might be able to relate to money that make more sense and also might help us to step into some new possibilities. I have been really focusing on the Shambhala Buddhist teachings, which are a fantastic, very practical and yet very, very visionary set of teachings on how to cultivate more sanity in our life, more joy, more upliftedness. And they have a lot to say that I think is very applicable to money. For one thing, the basis of how we can form a really strong and sustainable relationship to money in our lives is through the cultivation of mindfulness and some gentleness with ourselves, starting to really pay attention to what kinds of habitual patterns we have around money, what kind of emotional reactions do we have around money, what kind of struggles do we get into that when we really look at them may actually not be necessary.
And when you say mindfulness, what do you mean by, how does mindfulness apply to money, and what exactly do you mean by mindfulness?
Well, what I mean by mindfulness is really being present and looking at what happens with your body and emotions and mind at any given moment, really being completely aware of what's happening, which we often don't do with money. We may be aware that we're spending a lot, or we may be aware that we're anxious about something, or that we feel like we need to do something in a different way, all of which may be very intelligent. But when we apply some mindfulness and some awareness to really looking at what's going on with that, oftentimes we can go to a deeper level. We can see that we might have patterns that we inherited from our mother and our father about how we relate with money. In fact, it's very interesting. Different people, we all kind of assume we're relating in the same way, but we really don't. Even if we look at what our mother's relationship with money was, and then we look at what our fathers or our grandparents or our aunt or uncle, what each one of their relationship to money is, we'll find that it's really different. So the thing with habitual patterns is that once we notice them, we actually can notice that we don't have to follow them. It's only when there's in this kind of subconscious operation that we're sort of doomed to keep doing the same thing over and over again, or keep feeling the same ways over and over again. Once we start to allow some space there, some awareness, then we find that it becomes a lot lighter. We actually have some possibilities for working with things in a very different way than we might ever have even occurred to us.
Oh, that's very interesting. So where can we go? How can we move forward with this? Where do we go from here?
Well, The first thing I think, Alex, is really taking an interest, because it's for a lot of us, it's a somewhat scary subject. You know, I mean, money is one of those things that is symbolic in lots of ways about our feelings about ourselves. It's, you know, it has to do with survival issues. It has to do with very practical issues, you know, like how vulnerable we are in the world, or how much we might be able to provide for people we love, or situations we care about. So it's worth our spending some time being curious about it, even though it might feel a little bit, sometimes it might feel a little bit edgy. But that's actually usually a good sign. So there's some wonderful books out there right now. There's a great book called The Soul of Money that I really love a lot. And there's also different kinds of ways that you can go forward. We're teaching a class here at the Shambhala Center called The Challenge of Money. And I'm excited about that. It's very, over the years I've really found that it's wonderful to get together with a group of people and explore this some. Not because we have to share all our money stuff with each other, but simply because it's wonderful to be in a room with all kinds of people from all different kinds of walks of life and different levels of resources and everything else, just in this kind of common, really heartfelt exploration of, what is this? What is this stuff that doesn't even, you know, really exist, except that it's a symbol for something. You know, it's a symbol for richness, and it only exists because you and I can trade it back and forth, and because we have some agreement about it. And so that in of itself is very interesting. Why do we have all this neurosis around it in our culture, and how can we specifically get beyond that? So I guess the first thing is just really being curious and seeking out some ways of taking a look at it for yourself, and then beyond that, really sticking with that a little bit and seeing, well, if I go to cultivate perhaps a little more expansive view with money, how could I begin to find myself, once I see a little bit about what I have been doing, how could I be a little more creative, a little bit more open? There's a lot to be said about living life from a very generous point of view, from a very open point of view. When it comes to money, that's really only one of our resources, but it's one that we get stuck on a lot. So I would just say to actually have some creativity and some inquisitiveness with it, and go from there.
Well, thank you very much, Joanne. That's very interesting. Again, I was talking with Joanne Martin Braun, and I look forward to hearing more from you in the future, and maybe reading some books or going to some programs on money. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Alex.